Before we start, I want to say that only 1% of you are subscribed. Please subscribe because when we reach 1,000 subscribers, I will post a special video for you. The vibrant buzz of the interstellar trade hub on the edge of the galaxy was unlike anything John had ever experienced. His first steps into the sprawling complex were met with curious glances and hushed whispers from the diverse alien delegates milling about. The hub, a towering structure of gleaming metal and pulsating lights, served as the crossroads for diplomacy and commerce for countless civilizations. As John navigated through the crowded corridors, his human features seemed to draw particular attention. A pair of Tvun traders, their crystalline skin catching the light, paused in their discussion to eye him warily. "Never seen a human this close before," muttered one, his voice a low hum. "Careful," replied the other. "They're known for their clever minds and strategic thinking. Who knows what he's here to negotiate?" Unperturbed by the cautious reception, John made his way to the central meeting area, where he was scheduled to present his credentials. Along the way, he was joined by Marcus, another human delegate with a more seasoned air about him. "Getting a lot of stares, I see," Marcus chuckled, clapping John on the shoulder. "Don't let it get to you. It's the unknown factor. Makes him nervous." John smiled, appreciating Marcus' easy confidence. "Seems like we're more of an oddity than I expected." As they approached the main concourse, a towering figure blocked their path. The being was covered in iridescent scales and stood on what appeared to be multiple jointed legs. "I am Zerath," he introduced himself with a translator device that emitted a smooth, baritone voice. "Assigned liaison for your stay." "John Harris." John extended a hand, a gesture Zerath hesitated before mimicking awkwardly. Marcus followed suit, his handshake firmer. "We hope to foster mutual benefits through our discussions here," Marcus said diplomatically. Zerath nodded, his eyes glinting with a hint of curiosity. "Your species has a reputation. You thrive in environments many find challenging." John sensed an opportunity. "We're looking to build," Zerath, "exchange ideas, technologies, maybe help each other out with some of the more challenging spots in the galaxy. Humans are good at adapting." "Indeed," Zerath replied, his tone non-committal. "This way, please." The trio made their way to a large hall adorned with banners representing the various attending species. Zerath left them at the entrance, where a small group of delegates from different planets mingled. John noticed a few nods in his direction, the universal sign of greeting. Marcus leaned in, whispering, "You're up first. Remember, it's not just about what we want, but how we can help them too. Build bridges." John took a deep breath, stepping forward as the assembly quieted. "Thank you for having us," he began, his voice steady. "I come from Earth, a planet rich in diversity and life. We believe that our experiences and technologies could benefit many here. We're especially interested in advancing our understanding of sustainable energy and resource management." A murmur of interest spread through the crowd. An Avalonian delegate, feathered and bright-eyed, raised a hand. "And what do you seek in return, Mr. Harris?" "Partnerships," John replied without hesitation. "Collaborative projects, shared knowledge, and perhaps involvement in some of your planetary initiatives. We believe in progress through unity." The Avalonian nodded thoughtfully, and others began to warm up to the conversation. As the dialogue continued, the initial reservations seemed to melt away, replaced by a cautious optimism. Here, in the hub of the galaxy, John found his rhythm, engaging openly, his human perspective both novel and intriguing to the assembly. By the end of the meeting, several delegates approached to schedule private talks. John and Marcus exchanged a look of quiet satisfaction. The first step was taken, bridges were beginning to form, and the universe felt just a bit smaller. As they left the hall, John felt the weight of potential on his shoulders, not just for his mission, but for what humanity could bring to the galactic community. In the dimly lit chamber of the Alien High Council, whispers echoed off the curved walls as the leaders of various alien species gathered to discuss the human delegates' presence. The room, with its expansive round table and hovering seats, was filled with an air of tension. "We must address the humans," said Counselor Threx, his voice cutting through the murmurs. His leathery wings rustled as he adjusted in his seat. Their ability to sway the opinions of others could disrupt the delicate balance we've maintained. Agreed, chimed in Sila, a council member with bioluminescent features that glowed softly. John Harris, in particular, seems adept at forming connections. We observed this in the previous session. Around the table, nods and gestures of agreement followed. Vorin, a towering figure with metallic skin, leaned forward, his voice resonant. I propose an isolation directive. Keep the human, John, from forming alliances until we better understand their motives and methods. But we must tread carefully, interjected Lyrene, whose transparent skin revealed the fluid movements of his internal organs. Any overt action might push them away, or worse, against us. The council agreed to a subtle approach. Zerath, already familiar with John and Marcus, was chosen to implement this directive. I will guide their interactions, ensuring they remain under our observation without causing suspicion, he stated confidently. Back at the trade hub, John and Marcus were unaware of the council's decisions. They were in the middle of a discussion with a group of engineers from various planets, sharing insights on energy conservation technologies. Your concept of using tidal forces for energy is fascinating, John remarked to a Tvun engineer. We have similar initiatives but haven't perfected the technology yet. The engineer, intrigued, leaned in closer. Perhaps a joint venture could accelerate progress. Your human ingenuity is quite renowned. As the conversation unfolded, Zerath reappeared, his timing impeccable. John, Marcus, may I have a moment? His tone was polite but firm. Of course, Zerath, John replied, excusing himself from the group. What's up? There are some administrative details we need to sort out regarding your stay and the schedule of meetings, Zerath explained as they walked away from the crowd. Marcus, sensing a subtle shift in Zerath's demeanor, exchanged a glance with John. Is there a problem with our credentials or something? He asked. No, not at all, Zerath assured them. It's merely a routine check. However, I would recommend you prepare a more detailed presentation of your projects for the upcoming sessions. It could help clarify your positions and intentions. Sounds like good advice, John nodded, appreciating the guidance. We'll get on that right away. As Zerath left them to their preparations, Marcus whispered, Do you think he's keeping tabs on us more than he should? Maybe, John murmured back, but we'll play along for now. Let's keep our eyes open and focus on building those bridges, even if one at a time. That evening, in a quieter part of the hub, John and Marcus sat down to refine their approach. They pored over data, adjusted their speeches, and rehearsed key points, ensuring their message was clear and their intentions transparent. Transparency might be our best strategy, John concluded, stretching his back after hours of preparation. If they see we're open and honest, it might ease any concerns they have about us. Marcus agreed, feeling the weight of their mission more than ever. We're not just representing Earth. We're pioneers of a sort, setting the stage for future interactions. As they returned to their quarters, the corridors of the hub seemed less daunting, the stairs less piercing. Despite the isolation directive unknown to them, John and Marcus were undeterred, ready to face the challenges of the coming days with the hope of forging lasting partnerships across the stars. John's temporary residence in the hub had become a makeshift meeting ground as he and Marcus worked late into the night, discussing strategies and sharing their perspectives on interstellar diplomacy. The room was filled with screens displaying various data points and cultural dossiers on their alien counterparts. Their intense planning was interrupted by a soft chime at the door. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Expecting someone at this hour? John shook his head, puzzled, as he moved to answer the door. Standing in the corridor was Elira, the alien anthropologist John had briefly met during the first day's assembly. Her presence was unexpected, yet her demeanor suggested a purposeful visit. Good evening, John, Marcus, Elira greeted, her voice tinged with a formal yet friendly tone. I hope I'm not intruding, but I find myself keenly interested in learning more about human culture directly from its representatives. John smiled, his curiosity piqued. Not at all, Elira. We were just reviewing some data. Please, come in. As Elira stepped into the room, her eyes swept over the scattered papers and glowing screens. I see you humans are thorough in your preparations, she remarked, a hint of amusement in her voice. Marcus offered her a seat. We try to be. What brings you here at this hour, if you don't mind me asking? I am here to understand, Elira explained. In my studies, I've observed that human culture is rich with nuances that might not be immediately evident in diplomatic exchanges. I thought a more relaxed conversation might reveal more. John nodded, understanding the value of such interactions. We'd be happy to share. What aspects of human culture are you interested in? Everything, Elira replied earnestly. But perhaps we could start with something that defines humanity deeply. Your arts and emotional expressions. Marcus chuckled. That's a broad topic, but we could start with music. It's a universal language, isn't it? John agreed, pulling up a selection of human music ranging from classical symphonies to contemporary pop. As the first notes of a piano concerto filled the room, Elira listened intently, her expression contemplative. This is beautiful, she said after a moment. There's a depth of emotion here. Is this a common trait in your music? It is, John replied. Music reflects our history, our emotions, our very essence. Each piece tells a story or conveys feelings that words alone might not fully capture. The evening evolved into a cultural exchange. Marcus shared videos of Earth's diverse landscapes and cities, while John narrated the historical significance of various events and sites. Elira, in turn, shared insights into her own culture's art forms, creating a dialogue of mutual appreciation and understanding. As the hours passed, the initial formality faded, replaced by a warmth that spoke of burgeoning friendship. Elira was particularly moved by a video of a human dance performance. The movement, the coordination. It's also expressive, she marveled. Is dance also a form of emotional expression? Absolutely, Marcus responded. Dance can be celebratory, mournful, rebellious, or simply for enjoyment. It transcends language and cultural barriers, much like music. Elira's visit extended well into the night, with each topic leading naturally to the next. From literature to film, from culinary traditions to philosophical debates, the trio delved deeply into what it meant to be human, and by extension, what it meant to be a sentient being in the universe. As Elira prepared to leave, she thanked them for the insights. Tonight has been incredibly enlightening. I feel as though I understand not just human culture, but also the human condition more deeply. John and Marcus expressed their gratitude for her openness and interest. It's been a pleasure sharing our world with you, Elira. Let's continue this exchange during the conference tomorrow. With a nod and a smile, Elira departed, leaving John and Marcus to reflect on the evening. It seems we're not just here to negotiate trade routes, John mused. We're here to bridge worlds. Marcus agreed, his expression thoughtful. And perhaps that's the most important negotiation of all. John and Marcus decided to deepen their cultural exchange with the alien delegates by organizing a visit to a local art gallery that was featuring an exhibition of human art. They invited Elira and several other intrigued delegates, hoping to showcase human creativity and emotion through visual arts. As they entered the gallery, the walls adorned with vibrant paintings and intricate sculptures, the atmosphere was tinged with curiosity. The delegates murmured among themselves, their eyes scanning the diverse representations of human experience. Each piece here represents a different era or significant moment in human history, John explained as he led the group. Art is not only a form of expression for us, but also a way to document our emotions and pivotal events. They stopped before a large canvas depicting a tumultuous sea under a stormy sky, the waves captured in mid-crash against the rocks. This painting is called Tempest. It's by a renowned earth artist who specialized in capturing the power of nature, John continued, his voice full of admiration for the work. Marcus chimed in. Notice the emotion conveyed through the brush strokes, the choice of dark, moody colors. It's almost as if the artist is sharing his own feelings of turmoil and awe with us. Elira, her eyes wide with fascination, stepped closer to the painting. It's almost overwhelming, she said softly. The emotion is palpable. Is this intensity common in all human art? Very common, John replied. We often use art to express things we can't put into words. It's a way to connect with others on an emotional level, across time and space. The group moved on to a sculpture of two human figures, their forms abstract and intertwined. Marcus took the lead this time. This piece is about human relationships, love, friendship, conflict, and resolution. The artist wanted to explore the complexity of human interactions through a single, fluid form. A delegate from a species known for their logical and structured thinking spoke up. "It's fascinating. We use art mainly for historical records or religious ceremonies. Seeing it as a vehicle for emotional expression is quite unique." Encouraged by the interest, John guided them to a section of the gallery dedicated to contemporary art, featuring multimedia installations that combined visual, auditory, and tactile elements. This section shows how human art has evolved with technology. We now create experiences that engage all senses, inviting the viewer to be a part of the art itself. The delegates donned headphones and interacted with a piece that responded to their movements with changes in light and sound. Laughter and exclamations filled the air as they experienced the immersive artwork, their initial reservations giving way to enjoyment and wonder. As the tour concluded, the group gathered for a discussion led by John. "What did you all think? How does this compare to artistic expression in your cultures?" Elira was the first to respond. "I'm deeply moved. I think I understand humanity a little better now. Your art doesn't just mirror reality. It challenges and transcends it, evoking a spectrum of emotions and thoughts." Another delegate, previously quiet, added, "It's an eye-opener. In our culture, we often suppress emotional expression as impractical. Experiencing your art makes me question that practice." John smiled, pleased with the impact of the afternoon. Art is a dialogue, not just within our own culture, but with the world. We hope that by sharing it, we can foster a deeper understanding and connection among us. Marcus nodded in agreement. It's about finding common ground, even if our expressions differ. Maybe especially then. As they left the gallery, the mood was reflective but hopeful. The delegates were not just carrying away an appreciation for human art, but a newfound respect for the emotional depth it conveyed. John and Marcus exchanged a satisfied look, their mission to bridge cultures through understanding quietly advancing. Following the success of the art gallery visit, Elira invited John and Marcus to her apartment to share a traditional meal from her planet, hoping to reciprocate the cultural exchange. The atmosphere was cozy, with soft lighting and exotic scents wafting through the air. As they entered, Elira gestured towards the dining area, where dishes of various colors and textures were spread out on a low table. "Welcome, John, Marcus. I hope tonight gives you a taste of my world as much as I've experienced yours." John smiled warmly. "We're honored, Elira. Everything looks and smells wonderful." The trio sat down, and Elira began explaining each dish, her enthusiasm evident. "This is Kryzit, a dish made from the roots of yalsam trees. It's meant to be hearty and rejuvenating." Marcus tried a spoonful, his expression one of pleasant surprise. "This is delicious. There's a complexity to the flavors I didn't expect." As they continued to sample different foods, the conversation shifted naturally from culinary arts to other cultural practices of Elira's people, particularly their rituals of friendship and courtship, which involved elaborate dances and symbolic gift-giving. "Intriguing," John commented, "human expressions of affection can vary widely, but we also use dance and gifts quite commonly to show we care." Elira leaned in, curious. "Could you show me one of your dances? Perhaps something simple?" John chuckled, setting his utensils down. "Well, I'm no dancer, but sure, I can show you something basic. Marcus, care to join?" Marcus nodded, and they pushed the table aside to create some space. John stood, offering his hand to Elira. "Let's start with something slow and easy, like a waltz." As soft music played, John led Elira through the basic steps, his movements gentle and guiding. Marcus watched, tapping along to the rhythm and occasionally offering words of encouragement. Elira was a quick learner, her movements graceful and fluid. "It's quite different when you're physically learning it, rather than just watching," she observed, laughing lightly as she stumbled slightly, only for John to steady her. "It's all about connection and feeling the music," John explained, his voice low. "Each dance tells a story or sets a mood, just like our music and art." The lesson turned into an impromptu dance session with Elira teaching them one of her cultural dances in return. This dance was more rhythmic and involved a series of taps and claps, which John and Marcus attempted to mimic, resulting in bursts of laughter and more than a few missed beats. As the evening progressed, the initial formalities melted away, replaced by a warm camaraderie. They discussed their hopes for the future, both personally and for their respective cultures, and the importance of such exchanges in building interstellar understanding. Finally, as the night wound down, Elira expressed her gratitude. "Thank you both for sharing so much of your world with me and for embracing mine. I think tonight showed just how much we can learn from each other." John nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. These are the kinds of experiences that truly bridge our worlds. It's not just about treaties and trade, but understanding and respect. Marcus agreed, adding, "And who knows? Maybe one day, our peoples will share more than just meals and dances." They left Elira's apartment with a new appreciation for the power of cultural exchange and the bonds it could forge. It wasn't just about navigating a galaxy of diverse civilizations. It was about connecting them, one genuine interaction at a time. The next morning found John and Marcus at a seminar on interstellar negotiation tactics, a timely topic given their ongoing efforts to forge meaningful connections. The room was filled with delegates from various species, each bringing their unique perspectives to the complex dance of diplomacy. As they settled into their seats, a panel of experienced negotiators took the stage. The first to speak was Torin, a seasoned diplomat from the Virexian system, known for his sharp mind and strategic approach. "Understanding your counterpart is the cornerstone of effective negotiation," Torin began, his voice firm and commanding. "It's not just about what you want, but what they need and how they think." John nodded in agreement, leaning over to whisper to Marcus, "He's right. It's like what we've been doing, trying to understand their cultures and values." The panel continued with discussions on various negotiation strategies, from the aggressive to the cooperative. It was during a break that John and Marcus had the opportunity to approach Torin for a more personal discussion. "Torin, we've appreciated your insights today," John said as they shook hands. "I'm curious, how do you prepare for a negotiation with a completely unfamiliar species?" Torin's eyes gleamed with a mixture of respect and intrigue. "Ah, the human delegates. I've heard about your efforts here. To answer your question, I study their history, their art, and their social dynamics. You'd be surprised how much you can learn about a species from their culture." Marcus responded, "That's similar to our approach. We've found that cultural exchanges, like sharing music and art, open a lot of doors." "Indeed," Torin replied. "It's an underutilized strategy, but very effective. Tell me, have you found any particular challenges with the species here?" John thought for a moment before answering. "Some are naturally suspicious, others just vastly different in how they process emotions and relationships. But every conversation, every shared experience helps bridge that gap." The conversation was interrupted as the seminar resumed, this time focusing on nonverbal communication cues across different species. A renowned expert in xenolinguistics, Dr. Hamiel, led this session, demonstrating how posture, movement, and even eye contact could vary significantly in meaning from one culture to another. Understanding these cues is crucial, Dr. Hamiel explained, displaying images of various alien gestures and their meanings. A nod in one culture might signify agreement, in another, defiance. As the seminar wrapped up, John and Marcus discussed what they had learned with a few other delegates. 1. A delegate from the aquatic planet of Pella was particularly interested in human expressions of agreement and disagreement. "In Pella, we ripple our scales to show agreement," the delegate explained, demonstrating the subtle wave of blue scales along his arm. "That's fascinating," Marcus exclaimed. "Humans mostly use verbal affirmatives, but nodding is common too." "Like this," he nodded, and the Pella delegate mimicked the action, causing a ripple of laughter around them. As the group dispersed, John felt a sense of accomplishment. These seminars are invaluable. They're not just about tactics, but truly understanding each other. Marcus agreed, his mind buzzing with ideas. "Let's compile what we've learned. It could help us not just here, but in future negotiations with other species." They returned to their quarters, energized by the day's interactions. The evening was spent in discussion and planning, sketching out new strategies for engagement based on the principles they'd absorbed. It's about empathy as much as it is about strategy, John mused as they worked. Understanding not just how they negotiate, but why they negotiate the way they do. Right? Marcus added, and using that understanding to find common ground. It's complex, but it's the kind of challenge that makes this worth it. Their conversation stretched late into the night, both men dedicated to not only navigating but also enriching the mosaic of interstellar relations. In the sprawling conference room, John and Marcus prepared to present their insights and proposals to a diverse audience of delegates. The room buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with the potential for new partnerships and alliances. As they stepped up to the podium, John glanced at the gathered crowd, recognizing faces from various interactions over the past days. He cleared his throat, his voice steady and confident as he began. Thank you for joining us today. We've spent valuable time with many of you, learning about your cultures, your technologies, and your visions for the future. John started, his eyes scanning the room for familiar nods of acknowledgement. Marcus took over smoothly today. We want to discuss potential collaborative projects and shared initiatives that not only address our needs but also align with yours. We believe in progress through shared knowledge and mutual respect. A delegate from the Zeltrax cluster raised a hand, his tone curious. Could you elaborate on these initiatives? Are you proposing an exchange of technology, or is there something more? John nodded. Great question. Yes, technology exchange is a part of it, but we're also proposing joint research programs. For instance, we've discussed with some of you about sustainable energy solutions where we can combine our technologies and expertise. Marcus added, and beyond technology, we're interested in cultural exchanges. We've seen firsthand how much we can learn from each other's art, music, and history. These exchanges strengthen our bonds and enhance our understanding. The room filled with murmurs of interest, some delegates whispering to each other, others nodding thoughtfully. A fund trader, previously met at the hub, spoke up. Your approach is quite different from what we've seen. It's refreshing. But how do we ensure that all parties benefit equally? That's a critical point, John replied earnestly. Transparency and open communication will be key. We propose regular reviews of these collaborations, ensuring that all voices are heard and all concerns are addressed. Marcus chimed in. We envision a council that represents all involved species, overseeing these projects and ensuring fairness and equity. The suggestion sparked a buzz of approval. An Avalonian delegate, feathered and bright-eyed, asked, what about the logistics? Different species have different requirements and capabilities. We anticipate challenges, of course, John conceded. But together, we can create frameworks that accommodate our diverse needs. Pilot programs could be a start, testing small-scale projects before full implementation. As the discussion continued, more delegates participated, each contributing ideas and raising concerns. John and Marcus addressed each with patience and clarity, facilitating a dialogue that was both dynamic and constructive. After the session, the conference hall didn't empty immediately. Instead, clusters of delegates formed, discussing possibilities, exchanging contact information, and even sketching out ideas on digital pads. John and Marcus stood to the side, observing the buzz of activity they had initiated. Looks like we've got the ball rolling, Marcus remarked with a grin. John smiled, feeling a surge of hope. It's more than that. Today, we laid the groundwork for a future that's built on understanding and cooperation. It's a small step towards something much bigger. As they left the hall, the weight of their mission settled around them, not as a burden, but as a purpose. They had come to the hub to negotiate trade, but had become catalysts for a broader dialogue about interstellar cooperation and unity. That evening, back in their quarters, they reviewed the day's events, each conversation, each question, and each promise of follow-up. They were far from done. The real work would begin now, in ensuring the ideas discussed turned into actions and results. Marcus looked over at John. Today felt like we were doing more than just diplomacy. It felt like we were building bridges. John agreed, and those bridges can help us all cross into a future where we're not just allies but partners in shaping the galaxy. Their conversation drifted late into the night, plans and dreams for the future mingling with the stars shining outside their window. The closing ceremonies of the Interstellar Conference were held in the Grand Auditorium, a space that resonated with the achievements of the past days. As delegates from numerous civilizations gathered, the air was thick with anticipation and a sense of accomplishment. John and Marcus, having been central figures in fostering many of the week's discussions and initiatives, felt a profound connection to the moment. They were seated at the front, their eyes capturing the diverse assembly that represented the spectrum of the galaxy's inhabitants. As the ceremony began, the presiding officer, a dignified elder from the Andorian sector, took the stage. His voice boomed through the auditorium. "We stand here at the precipice of a new era, one defined not by our differences but by our willingness to embrace them." John leaned over to Marcus, whispering, "It's remarkable, isn't it, to see all this come together?" Marcus nodded, his eyes reflecting the pride and hope of the room. "It's more than I imagined. We've started something that might just change the galaxy." The officer continued, "Among us are two humans who have shown remarkable dedication to the ideals of unity and cooperation. I invite John Harris and Marcus Levin to share their reflections on this gathering." As they made their way to the podium, applause filled the room, echoing the respect and camaraderie that had been built. John cleared his throat, looking out over the crowd of faces, both familiar and new. "Thank you, everyone. This week, we've all witnessed what's possible when we come together, not as different species negotiating from behind barriers, but as partners discussing our future openly," John began, his voice steady and clear. Marcus took over seamlessly. "We've talked a lot about trade, technology, and treaties, but more importantly, we've shared our cultures, our arts, and our visions for the future. These are the true bridges between us." A soft murmur of agreement rippled through the audience. Elira, who was in the crowd, nodded appreciatively, her earlier conversations with John and Marcus having sparked many of the cultural exchanges that had enriched the conference. John continued, "It's easy to see the galaxy as a place of conflict and competition. But this week has shown us another path, a path of empathy, understanding, and cooperation." Marcus added, "Our journey doesn't end here. What we've started is just the beginning. Each of us has a role in building on what we've created, in taking the spirit of this conference back to our worlds." The presiding officer returned to the podium, his voice resonating throughout the hall. "Let us move forward with the declaration we've prepared, inspired by the contributions of all, especially our human friends." As the declaration, a pledge of cooperation and peace, was read aloud, delegates from every corner of the galaxy stood in unity. John and Marcus exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement of the phrase that had started it all. When alien soldiers realize why humans are the most dangerous warriors in the universe. Indeed, the real power of humanity, as they had demonstrated, was not in warfare but in their unparalleled ability to unite, to inspire dialogue, and to foster peace. With the declaration signed, the ceremony concluded with a standing ovation. Delegates approached John and Marcus, shaking hands, sharing embraces, and expressing their gratitude and excitement for the future. As the auditorium slowly emptied, John and Marcus remained, soaking in the final moments of an event that had transcended expectations. "We did it, Marcus. We actually did it," John said, a broad smile on his face. "We did," Marcus agreed, clapping John on the back. "Now, let's go home and prepare for the real work ahead." They left the auditorium together, stepping out into the starlit night, ready to navigate the new alliances they had helped forge, driven by the shared dream of a united and peaceful galaxy.